Anyone opposed or abstention? Okay, so we're off to the second side. David first and then Dale.
Just another question. Line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They loaded or embarked onto 130 to 300 ships. Now, why in the world is there that kind of disparity? Did they not count?
I'm guessing we have
Was-
at least
was
two
it not
different,
count?
and if you want to address David,
Yeah, that's fine.
yeah,
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The official documentation from the British Naval Command was 130 ships. General Moultrie's physical count was over 500 ships, and he actually mentions that in his memoirs at least once, and in several speeches as well. So people might ask, why is there a difference? It would be just like in the American evacuation of Saigon back in the 70s, that in the 1970s. The U.S. Navy would have the official number of ships there to take off personnel, and then there would be many more ships than that, than what they reported, because of the evacuation. And this was a major evacuation of over 14,000, individuals from Charleston. So basically, there was almost a complete turnover of the population in Charleston at the time. The official population size was less than 14,000 at the time. So that's the discrepancy. And you might say, well, why were there more ships there? And the answer usually in history is because of contraband. I hope that answered your question, sir.
and meaning enslaved Africans or freed Africans, people of African descent.
And I'll give you a specific example. The church bells of St. Michael's actually went on a contraband ship. So that wasn't on the 130. That was on the higher count. That was not the official British record. The British did not want to officially take the bells of St. Michael's onto their official ships.
Right.
Dale?
That's very interesting. I'm wondering if there's a word we could use. I know there's not much room, but to show that in fact that's a debated number. A debated number. In other words, that's a question that comes to everybody's mind. Well, is that a typo? Or why don't they know? Or why don't they take the midpoint? And it's going to be distracting from the other facts, in my opinion.
So can you suggest, let's all put our thinking.
Could you say up to 150 ships instead of that first number?
Did you say hundreds?
Well, one option, and again, space is a concern. You could just say from Gadsden's Wharf onto a debated number of ships destined for so-and-so. I don't want to take away the historical fact, but you got such an uncertainty there that in no way.
And do you think it would damage the historical accuracy if the words were changed to Gadsden's Wharf onto as many as 300 ships? Or do you think the 130 and the 300 are both important to have?
I'd like to clarify that the archives actually writes this.
Right. But we are free to change it.
Yes, sir. And my opinion is, if you're asking my opinion is I really liked Ms. Eastman's suggestion and your suggestion of up to, or something like that, 300. Moultrie actually says in the hand count from Francis Marion, who I think probably did a diligent job, but that's an opinion statement. That's not as a historian, I'm not saying that that's the fact. But many Marion's men were responsible for actually counting the ships. and they came up with a number of 500.
Mhm.
It was a very large evacuation.
Right. I mean, if you think of 14,000 people plus the bells of St. Michael's and a variety of other things, Peg,
Could you say a convoy of ships and get rid of the number altogether? I mean, a convoy can be any number. A large
But they went in many different directions.
or fleet of ships.
right, or hundreds, I think really shows, 100 is, 150 is the lowest, that's 100. They've got 300. It seems to be another source, Mutri himself, that said up to 500. So possibly hundreds. I mean, to me, I think that, we're always trying to figure out how to convey history in the least amount of words to the public who has no ground, who often is ignorant of it. So I think hundreds might show how massive it was. So we're saying on to, and we're crossing 130 to 300 to onto hundreds, HUNDREDS. And obviously, I think there'll be enough spaces for that. And it should be hundreds of. So let's see if there's enough characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Seems to me to be the exact number, including the space. So hundreds of should fit.
My understanding is very orderly evacuation, unlike the reference to not doing something wrong. Because they went street to street, marching toward the hips. I've read other sources that say it's pretty orderly evacuation, as opposed to like a willy-nilly.
Yes, sir, that is correct according to the papers in Nathaniel Green, and these are contemporaneous reports also. So it follows it from actually 2 weeks before, very closely up into the last British soldier stepping on the last launch to get to the last warship. There is actually a famous historical picture of the British evacuation that hangs of Charleston in the Delaware Museum. And it's reprinted in books in the South Carolina Historical Society and things like that. And there's actually a historic lithograph of the Continental Army in Moultrie in town at the Liberation. But yes, sir, it was a very organized, but it was very, very tense as well, because there were warnings on both sides that if there was any shot fired, it was going to go to full warfare. And the ships of the line were actually lined up on the Cooper River, and the walls had been torn down at the end of current day Calhoun Street. At that time, it was called Boundary Street. And the hornwork covered basically, well, not basically, it covered twice the size of Marion Square. So if you flip Marion Square over towards the west, that's how large it was. And the walls were as high as 26 feet high, with cannons and moats for approximately 1 mile. And then the different redoubts before you even got into the walls. So it looked like a medieval castle. So on the day of the evacuation, there was going to be a cannon signal for Anthony Wayne and only one other rider to come up to the first redoubt. And once that cannon fire went off, they, two riders actually went to the redoubt and exchanged words with the British commander in that redoubt. Some say it was Wemyss, but there are conflicting sources of exactly who that British officer was. And then they abandoned the redoubt, and the Continentals took that redoubt, and the second redoubt was abandoned, and then they came back in through the hornwork, which, keep in mind, you had to go over a moat drawbridge and through the hornwork and come out of the other side that came out on the other side in present-day boundaries, Calhoun Street, and then make a left-hand turn and go down to Gadsden's Wharf, where they disembarked. Leslie handpicked his Scottish regiment to have this, to be the last troops to leave. They were very battle-hardened and ready to go to war instantly. There are many historians, myself included, that that believe that if firing would have, if there was one panicked soldier at the time fired, that it would have renewed the war, and the chances of Britain ever giving us our ever granting our independence would have been reduced significantly. So it was very, very tense all the way until the last British soldier stepped into the last launch and went to the last warship. Sorry if I was too long, sir.
No, not at all. No, not at all. I'm sure we're all looking forward to hearing more about it, like next, or, you know, on the anniversary of. Any more discussion on side 2? The only question that I'll have is, you know, so it may take several months before it's up there. I'm not sure. You know, we say you say 2025, and, you know, I just don't know what the backup's going to be for the manufacturing company, you know, that actually does it. And if y'all are aimed for a day, and I'm just asking you if that makes any difference to you. You know, we will pass it in 2025, but sometimes it takes time for it to get up. You know, I'm just asking if that's any significance to the sponsors of it.
Yes, sir, you are correct. The history of it is about 90 to 120 days, once the order is in and the money is paid. They want
Right,
the money
yeah.
up front.
Okay, well, so that should be time, and okay, just wanted to make sure. Sometimes we have actually caught the date at the last minute. Okay, but if there's any other discussions, if someone would like to make a motion to accept side 2 as corrected. Okay, and first, made by Dale, seconded by Peg. Any discussion? If we're ready to vote, everyone in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Okay, it is approved. I know we're all looking forward to see it. Just FYI, or just curious as to where, do you know exactly where it will be in Liberty Square? Will it be more toward the street or more toward the water? Or is that to be determined with the city? And again, just idle curiosity.
That is to be determined with. Understanding is that the normal procedure is that someone from the archives will coordinate with someone from the city, and they will mutually agree on what the most appropriate spot is.
Yep, and like I said, yep, well, that's great. Well, thank you. And y'all are welcome to stay, but feel free to leave if you want to as well. And the next item of business is the, yes, sorry.
If I may, before they leave, I want to point out that every year now, for I don't know how many, 6 or 8, Ken and his wife and his small group have executed a wonderful event on Marion Square on or near December 14th to commemorate and recognize this. And every time I hear it about it, I hear more detail. The first year was a parade, not a parade. I take that back. It was a procession
Right.
from Marion Square to Liberty Square, representing the British, people say, being run out of Charleston. Well, that's a good way to look at it. But it was, in fact, an orderly departure. And the facts and figures that relate to these vessels, to the soldiers, to the officers, to the patriots, to the people of Charleston, it's a wonderful story. And I just commend Ken from, excuse me, being the leader of that. And in recent years, he's a member of the 250 Commission. So quite an addition for all of us.
Right, and I went to one of those, and now the square is marked with signage and the marks throughout the metal signs on the ground, which I think you might have presented to us for information at one point, or someone from, that we were told that they were going to be put up there.
Yeah, Tom Weinzarell
Was
at the
it-
time was chairman of the Board of Field Officers, the Marion Square owners, and he came and gave that
Okay,
presentation.
was that?
Tom
that-
Weinzarell.
Okay, yeah, okay. So, well, thank you all, and a great event to mark. Now we're on to item E, Charleston's 9 Memorial Park example storyboard concept. Do we have that? Is it on the screen or?
We can put it up on the screen. We also have Jason Cruson from the fire department, I believe, on the line.
Okay,
And so he can come in and share what he has to say.
thank you both.
Jason, if you're on the line, you can feel free to share with us.
Yes, actually, I am 1 block away. So if you'd like, I can just defer for about 3 minutes and I'll be in person.
Is that okay with the members? Do we, 3 minutes? I do think with the we could move the agenda around.
That's up to you all. You'd have to vote to move the agenda
agenda
around, but
around,
that would be
yeah.
all.
Are we all content to cool our heels? Wait for the person in the flesh? Okay, okay, that's great. I don't know if anyone had a need to be somewhere else. Right, if we wanted, I mean, are we content to wait 3 minutes or do we want to amend the agenda? Okay,
In the interim, could I ask a question, please?
sure.
This is off the record, but Dale, what is the, what now?
We're recording, so beware of your political future, Peg.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. I just wondered what prompted this and what you wanted to get out of this discussion, Dale.
No, we're not on a live agenda item.
Mm.
We are paused in our committee meeting between agenda item D and E, waiting for the presenter of agenda item E.
Happy to share what we've got on the screen.
Oh, that'd be
in the
great.
time being. Oh, here we are.
We made it in less than 3 minutes. We're impressed.
Impressive.
And there is a microphone up here if you'd like to use that. And just because we're online and it's for the record, if you don't mind identifying yourself.
Good afternoon. Sorry, a little winded, ran up. Jason Cruzen with the Charleston Fire Department.
Welcome.
And this is my first trip here, so I'm not sure how you normally
You're on the,
this, but I'm happy
yeah.
to answer any questions if you have them or if I need
right.
to-
So we just say that your item E on the agenda, Charleston 9 Memorial Park example storyboard concept. So I'm assuming that you're presenting this for information only to talk about plans and what's planned for the site?
Yes. Just up a little bit. Sorry. So the if I'm sure everybody's probably familiar with the site, the park. So last year we did a renovation, completed a renovation beautification project, added in some extra walkways. It's a historical spot, recent history. So we want to be historically accurate, but we want to be able to tell the story. We now have less than 60 members that are still employed that were here at the time of the fire. So we get a large number of people that come in from the outside visiting both fire service and non-fire service. So we want to, much like a national park, have some storyboards up that is people can go through as a self-guided tour when we're not available, or at such time when there aren't a lot of people left that are here to tell the story. We've done our due diligence ahead of time and provide that historically accurate story of the timeline of the fire, not only what happened, but our learning points that came out of it. So that's the reason. So what we presented was just one of 11 storyboards that we want to put up. Not having done this, but wanting to do it right, we didn't want to overload you and you kick it back and say, you need a lot of work to go here. So this was the first storyboard 1 that you would see at the entrance. That is a mock-up. Obviously, it has to go to DRB, and we understand the aesthetics of it, how it looks, have to be approved as well. But for a visual, we provided this as an example of what we're shooting for. And it would be on like a 36-inch style board, much like you see at a national park or a historical marker. So our hopes are we provide this if the formatting is correct and it goes in line. We have the others prepared. We can do that. If you red ink it, if you will, a lot, then we don't waste anybody's time. We can go back and make those same corrections as we move throughout. But each board would have really what happened, a timeline of the fire as you walk through the paths. So these would be positioned throughout the park. This is the picture here is number 4, but they would be numbered so you could do a self-guided tour. It has what happened at the fire, the progress or the lesson learned, a key takeaway that relates to a significant event at the fire. And then if those markers are in proximity to one of the 9 markers, then at the bottom, on certain ones, we would list information about that member and a little bio. So they don't all have that, only the ones that are within proximity of the marker.
I can put up your number 1 text if you want that.
Yes, if you would. I wasn't sure. Again, I understood after I submitted the committee looks at the text, but I wanted to give some background just for you knew what we were shooting.
No, that's great. So, by statute, I guess, and the only reason, that we're here is that if a historical marker gets put up on city property, we basically vet it. And so then I'm sure, speaking for the commission, we're all eager to see that spot memorialized. And just the logistics, we've done this before with lots of text. Most recently we did it with very word-heavy text, for the parks at Maryville with many different signs. And all I can say is, the more work that y'all do before, the easier it is for us to go through. We do these days, because none of us are experts on everything, we do kind of ask for background information as well, so we can make sure the information is correct. So, depending on what that might be, we're not going to doubt you, but we have to do the good faith effort of knowing, that yes, that this information is correct. And so then anything you can do, to do that, even if it's newspaper clippings or anything like that, or, whatever, or you can refer us to maybe a study that was done. And I will say that oftentimes that it is actually language that slows it down. We often, and we just did in our last thing that we approved in 5 minutes, was we always want to assume that the people on that spot know nothing about it. So, whoever's drafting the language, we would encourage people to take that attitude, to assume that people don't know Charleston, people don't know firefighting, and y'all very well may have done that, but, but again, and that always just, quickens the process, so we don't have to, wordsmithing by committee can often be a really tedious, and if you have a specific date in mind, I would, urge you to try to, if you do that, you wanted to have these signs up, by a certain time, then I would, since we generally only meet monthly, and so then that just might be something to consider as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, so we did go through and look at it through the eyes of a non-firefighter to try and do that. We can provide the reports. There are 2 main reports that were done: a NIOSH report and an independent, a third-party report that they did an investigation right after the fire. So I believe those are pretty factual accounts of the effect. And obviously we have people that were at the event that are still there that helped draft a lot of this. So they have firsthand experience of it. But yes, we are prepared to answer your question or to state, we're hoping to have this for next year. So the memorial's coming up in 2 weeks.
Right.
And then our thought is if we can get this through, it might take a couple months with 11 of these boards
Yeah.
to go through. And then several months, 3 to 4 months to actually have them made and installed. So our hopes are to have it by the memorial next year, 12
Right.
months.
I mean,
Is that a realistic timeline, you think, or should we?
I mean, I think it's going to depend on, often again, so there are how many panels? And again, I'm just thinking that
11.
11. So, I mean, I would, and what we may want to do is, it would be a marathon, I think, to have them presented all at one time. Speaking for this committee, we would
That's
be
what I
here for
thought.
hours. So the thought might be to space them out in sequential order. Number one first, and then that way, we can build upon it. And then if necessary, if there is some internal contradiction, maybe we can go back to the first one and do that. And again, I'm only speaking for this committee, but everyone else is, welcome to turn on their green light as well to think if they have suggestions. One thing I will say, and I'm just going to throw it out for discussion, do we think that people are going to understand the 24-hour clock? If 1902, do we want to say, what is it, 7 p.m.? I mean, I'm just throwing that out there beforehand because, again, it does seem to be written to people, who do, just a thought that comes up to me, just seeing the few words that I see.
And I'll interject real quick. If you guys don't have it, it's the last 5 pages of your thick agenda.
Okay, sorry, I did not print all of that out. So I don't have that. So I brought my own copies, so that'd be great.
Arlen, let me ask a question. Are we only reviewing the color slide, which is what is actually going to be on?
The colored
we
slides
review-
are
are we
the
re-
examples. The text is in like a Word format. And I'm
Okay.
not sure those are like fully prepared to be like reviewed or red marked or anything like that. But if you have suggestions,
But are we even reviewing this for corrections too?
I mean, not today, certainly. This is
No,
just,
I'm
yeah,
just talking about the other pages as opposed to just the plaque, so to speak. In other words, this looked like the background information.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
was
I'm
used to
assuming that we
create
will,
plaques.
I'm assuming that we will be, so if there are images, we would have to also, if there are captions under the images,
No, I was talking about this detailed 4 or 5 page
which I'm going to familiarize
document
myself.
that's on the screen now.
Jason, the Word document that's up, that's going to be the detailed on the that'll be on the pictures that
Yeah,
are planted
Correct.
at
That
the
would be
site.
Text that was shown in the visual. So would you want the photograph for context when you see the text under the photograph, or do you just merely need the text under the photograph?
I mean, sometimes on the bike trip, David, what's your issue? Sorry, I misunderstood.
Yeah, all right, I understand. That's going to be on the plaques.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, so I could see, we're reviewing that eventually anyway. What I'm saying is this 5 page thing that says picture synopsis, and then it says, whatever, progress or whatever. Is this something that we're also reviewing, or is this just for information?
I would say you're reviewing that. The picture of the slide is more for the information is what my
So
understanding.
where is this going to go?
So that
On the-
text,
This
So-
thing is going to go on the plaque as well as,
There's 11 plaques.
Correct. There's 11 plaques. What I provided here, those 5 pages are the text that would go on one plaque. It's going to be a large plaque. It's like you see it at a
where-
Okay, so-
national park. It's 3 foot.
this is the plaque.
Yes,
What is on those white pages there, that's going to be on the plaque. But
correct.
They're not on the plaque. It's not on the plaque.
No, but this is plaque number 4, I think. there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
the-
example I had of the mock-up is number 4. I
Right.
didn't give you number
Right.
4 yet. I started with number 1. I only did one
So
mock-up,
this
and I
would be
just happened to
number
pick
1.
number 4.
So the text that we have is the text plan for marker number 1.
Correct.
Number 1. Okay, well, that explains it.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry to confuse you, yes.
No.
I originally when we did a mock-up, I just arbitrarily picked 4 because
Right.
that's the one we had text on.
Right.
And Peg,
May I make a comment about this?
Yes,
This is just my weak eyes. I think you have too much text on here. it gets to be so all encompassing that you lost me visually. And you might consider, if you possibly can, cutting down on the words as much as possible.
Okay.
I mean,
Does the size of the plaque, because that plaque is going to be 3 foot
It's,
by,
it's got too much information on it,
okay.
I mean,
in my opinion.
right. And again, what we often struggle with is, we're often have the exact opposite. We just approved a sign that you have to count the characters on it because it's cast in bronze. But just knowing people the way they are, and I think Peg probably gave good advice, Peg Eastman did, is that oftentimes people these days, and especially the younger you are, and I don't mean to pick on one group, just the unwillingness to engage so long. So again, it's just an editorial suggestion, to be as brief as possible. And possibly if you want the fuller story to, maybe to use the QR codes, that if people want more, because I don't know if it's your own personal experience, but I think, people, if you really want to move people, I think Peg is probably giving you sound advice, which of course you don't have to accept, that, the briefer and the most succinct that you can be, I think you're going to capture more people's attention. And again, there will be a published report. There was a published report. I think the QR code gives you the ability to have your cake and eat it too, to satisfy people who were there, and then to allow people, if they want more information, to follow things up. And maybe even thinking about something, possibly of, having the smaller texts as you walk through. And then if people wanted a fuller story, maybe there would be one plaque in the back or something like that where they could look at it right there in lieu of a QR code. But to keep people moving through in the order that you want and to affect people the way you want to do it, I do think Peg probably had sound advice.
Make another comment? You can
Please.
try this on your family. See how much time they would spend reading this and what they think. They will probably give you good advice.
All right. And that is why I'm here. I didn't think we would get anything accomplished from
Right,
reviewing
right.
it. I wanted to present what our intentions are, but
Right.
certainly that's why we're here, is to get the feedback.
Right,
So thank
and
you.
if the commission will allow it, I'd be happy to preview it first before we come to a meeting, just maybe so we don't bog down this meeting to say that, I'm going to say that these are the issues that we have bogged down on in the past. And the thing is too, just, and you probably know this, just the way we need the information, is it we saying 10 days now in advance before we have a meeting? And we generally meet the first Wednesday, if we can, of the month.
So we generally try to have it 10 days advance. Sometimes I do have, oh, we know we're going to do this thing, but we don't have all the full backup stuff for it. So I'll put it on the agenda and I'll let you guys know that we're going to have a meeting. But, latest as possible, I've been shooting for 6-7 days, but I want everybody to get it to
Yeah,
us
we want to be
10
able to
days
read it.
before.
And two to three per session, is that, or 2 or 4?
I mean, my thought would be is, we can always, if you have them ready, I would say send them on. We may not be able to get to them. So my thought would be is give us more than we can do instead of us blazing through. And we have done that before, saying, after we get X number of time and we start, we start getting tired, then we say we defer to the next meeting. So like I said, if they're ready, send them on, but again, maybe with the expectation that we won't get to them at a particular meeting.
And for my clarification or purpose, the progress section is more or less what we've done to hopefully correct
Sure.
what happened, something we identified as a problem. It's really just saying what we have done, or, what we've learned, a
Right.
policy we've implemented or a type of
Right.
training. Is that something that this group would review, or are you just merely looking at the historical stuff?
No,
You wanna
if you
see all
say,
text.
no, if you say that you did this, we're going to take your word for it.
Okay.
We don't need to read the policies and procedures, but again, with the QR code, you can always, for more information, David?
2 comments. One, apropos of that, I don't think the progress, and maybe you don't plan it that way, but I don't think it needs to appear on every single of the plaques. In other words, if you have plaque number 1, which is the overall information, when you do have progress on this, then it would also allow maybe for a little bit larger writing to not necessarily have the progress on every one of the plaques, because you've already got it on plaque number 1. So people will have already read what the progress was. And if you add it to every plaque, for instance, like it was on the one you provided us today, then it's just like that. If you put that on every plaque, it's just redundancy and would allow you to be spaced out a little bit more about the guts, so to speak, of each of the places where you're memorializing the firemen, and make it a little easier for the people to come through and not have to say, well, I've already read that, on plaque number 1 or whatever. So that's one point. And then I'll also say, in preparation for us for the future, at least on plaque number 1, they have, and I'm trying to find, well, I had the example a minute ago, where, where the first time the engines and the ladders were identified would be where you would want to identify who the individuals are, who you're referencing. But for example, on the first page, at the bottom of this page, if you could scroll down, I think it's that one. Is that the first page? I can't read that. Yeah, go back to the first page at the bottom now.
You can use your slide to increase the font size.
Yes, right. Yeah, the very bottom of the first page. Okay, when you see at the bottom, it says, picture number 2 is the earliest known picture of the incident and taken at 1916 or whatever. Pictured is engine 11 on the left and ladder 5 on the right. Engine 11 consisted of an acting captain, an assistant engineer, and a firefighter. Ladder 5 consisted of acting captain Mark Kelsley, assistant engineer Michael Frenchie French, and firefighter Brandon Thompson. So you've identified by name the people who are in ladder 5, but only by position for engine 11.
Yes.
It's
So to answer, we only put the names of the deceased. So
Ah,
so those
okay.
3 gentlemen died
Okay.
at the fire. So the
Gotcha.
other ones we left very kind of sterile, so
Sure.
we drew attention to the 9.
That makes sense. I just
Okay.
I didn't pick up on.
No,
the rest.
that's
Yeah.
fine.
Okay.
And then I guess, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just want to.
Oh, no, that was all I was going to say.
Okay, so on the first part, the way that the 11 boards were designed or laid out was we picked 11 significant events, kind of things, turning points or things that went wrong.
Mhm.
And the start of the fire, and then things that transpired. And then because they were such significant events, we picked an outcome that was really a monumental change that the National Fire Service has learned from. So we would really like to keep the progress, because we want to highlight this was a significant event. This made something go wrong, or something happened as a result of something. And then this is what we've learned from it. So could we,
Well,
I guess,
is it-
compromise and still put progress, but shorten that and refer to that on the QR?
So would each one of them have a different progress that you did? Okay.
Yes.
I was unaware of that. I just saw
Yeah.
that you had progress on both and it seemed like it was redundant. But if it's something different, then that makes sense.
And some of them would free up, as I said, the one that I sent the picture of has the 2 bios from the 2 members.
Right.
I think 5 of the 11 have those because they're close to the markers. So there's 2 on some, 1 on another, but the other 5 don't have any. So there's a lot more
Really?
real estate on the sign.
So the bios are not of all of them? You
I'm
don't have-
sorry.
You don't have the bios of all of them?
There's all 9 have bios, but
Right.
because where they perish, they're together. So if there's a
Right.
marker in that proximity, there may be 2.
Too.
As
Oh,
with
right.
that example, there's 2 at the bottom, but then maybe in the back portion, it talks about where the fire started, but nobody
Nobody. perished.
died there. So there's no grave
Okay.
marker or identification marker.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Perhaps because that needs some clarification, you could put the word deceased and have these people that you mentioned instead of, and then it wouldn't matter what you left out. Do you know what I mean?
In the text, like after their name, put
I
deceased?
don't know, but just somehow indicate that these two people died here.
Okay,
As I said, I couldn't read all this comfortably, so I didn't. And, again,
on that,
yes,
the mock-up, yes.
right.
Yeah, it is very small. I have a big one. If you would like to see it, I can bring it just next time if you
I
like.
think you should reduce the words,
Okay.
sir.
No.
Really,
Thank you.
and put them on the QR codes.
Yes, ma'am.
It's the-
Dale?
Sir, I agree that there's far too much writing and therefore too much to read on each one of these. We're looking at number 4 as an example. But let me ask you about the QR codes. There's 4 QR codes on that one page. Am I to believe that the 3, not the one on the far right, but the other 3 are exactly the same text that's presented on the 3-foot board?
No, so all
Uh,
the QR codes would direct back to the fire department's website, which is where we would host the files. If somebody were to hit a QR code, it would either take you to a policy, a training thing that we did. So each QR code is different.
Right, but is it-
For example, I just
is it-
used a generic QR code. So if you tried it, I don't even know where it sent you. It might have
Right,
taken you to a McDonald's menu or something.
Mhm.
That was just to show an example, but each one would take you to a different thing. So for the bio, it gets into a lengthier thing about that
say
individual.
like for engineer Balti, picture, write up, QR code. Does that QR code go to
Biography.
the same exact information?
No, sir.
Okay, so that's different. And on the final one on that page, far right, lower, it says to learn more QR code. So actually, each of these is a to learn more QR code. Is that, am I right?
Yes, so like on the progress one, there's a QR code. It would take you to whatever we develop, whether it's a policy, a training program that we designed, because a lot of the visitors that we get are fire recruit schools, new firefighters in the fire service, Horry County, Lexington County, Columbia. They bring their recruits down here and teach them because this is an event of national significance. So we don't want to recreate it. So they always ask us, well, you learn so much. How do we learn from you? So we want to share what we've done. So
Good.
that way, when they go home, they can scan our policy. So they're not recreating the wheel, and they get our policy, and then they can adapt it to use in their own department.
I guess my critique is that for one panel, there's too much to read, and for 11 panels, I'm gonna turn around and go home somewhere along the way, if I'm just a guy passing through.
Right,
But the QR code makes everything available, and maybe take a little extra effort to just, to indicate what each QR code will lead you to. This
Okay.
gives the impression that you'll see the same information.
Okay, that's good. So put like a little box below it, say this QR code is for this
Or-
training program or this
Yes,
policy.
exactly.
You wouldn't need to do that. If you just put, excuse me, engineer Bradford Brad Realty deceased, and then say bio, and you could have his picture, and you could have all this stuff on the QR code, you know?
Or,
Yeah.
or cut it down. I do, again, I would suggest strongly that you cut at least 50%, if not more, and you can actually do it without giving up a lot of information. I'm just going to look at the first sentence on number 4. The picture on the left was taken at approximately 7:35 p.m., which is about 24 minutes after the Charleston Fire Department arrived, et cetera, et cetera. You can cut that, you can get all that information in about a third of the words. The picture to the left was taken approximately 7:35, 24 minutes after the fire department arrived on the scene. You don't need the 7-Eleven with 2 engines, a ladder, 1 battalion chief, and 1 assistant chief. A total of 11 total emergency, whatever. So again, you can really, so while it might seem draconian that we're saying cut a lot of this,
No.
but you can really convey the same information by just, I mean, every word that you cut, and again, we're doing this out of kindness, because we want people to read this. And I agree with Dale that people will just, if they wanted to read a book, they would read a book. And I just don't think, and again, obviously we're belaboring the same points. So I don't know if there's someone within the department that does PR. I don't know if that's your job. I don't know But if
No,
you've got
I-
someone, right, if you've got
Yeah.
someone, that does do language, that does do press releases, certainly give this to them. And I think, because again, if we were given something like this, it would take us several hours to do one, and we might not even get through one. If it were presented like this, we would, it would, we would really bog down.
And I appreciate everything everybody's
And again,
saying.
this is-
I value that. That's why I came, and that's
Right.
why we only gave you one,
Right.
because I knew it was going to be disastrous, if
Yeah.
I may. Just because we've never done this before, so we wanted to seek the input before we wasted, I say wasted,
Right, no,
your time, just to see where we were on the mark.
no, I
So,
think,
Thank you. I do appreciate it. Thank you.
yeah, and I think everyone wants to see this done, and everyone wants to see it's right, with the caveat that we know the public that we're dealing with. And so then, condense, and the shorter, the more dramatic, that's going to get people.
You will find this in any museum you go. Trust me.
What's that?
People see these signs and after about the third long one, they just start walking right along. I
Yes,
don't
sir.
care where you are, the National Gallery, New York, the Louvre, it doesn't matter. You can't take in that much.
Thank
And thank you. May I also suggest, do you know some school teacher who might help you? That would probably be your best bet.
Yes.
And yeah, run it by a teenager.
Yeah, your 16-year-old.
Yeah.
If I can stop them for long enough to read it.
Exactly.
Right,
Yes.
exactly. That's the issue, right, yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the feedback. We'll
Yeah.
take it and
Yeah, and we look forward to seeing this and helping it get done.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, you're doing a wonderful thing.
Well, thank
and
you.
Thank
We're trying to preserve while we're still
It's
here and
right.
active
Yeah.
before we're gone, and we're trying to track down people. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
Yeah, and for doing this, that's a monumental effort in itself.
It's been a work in progress.
so now we're moving on to item Agenda F, discussion of 2020 resolution and purposes and responsibilities of the commission, requested by Commissioner Dale Teeling. So Dale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been on the commission here about, I don't know, maybe 3 years or so. And somewhere along the way, I decided that we needed to have a better understanding of who we are and why we're here. And I hope I'm going to answer Ms. Eastman's question along the way. So I looked at the ordinance and it's been provided by the city staff. So we thank you for that, Philip. And also the resolution that I prepared back in 2020, I drafted it, but this commission approved it unanimously, and it was sent forward to the city council and mayor. And along the way, with other things happening, it's kind of lost to me when it was delivered and how it was received. But I've been assured by this commission that it was delivered and received by city council. And to my knowledge, there was no reply, no response, no kiss my foot or anything else. So what effect it had on council members or council as a whole, I don't know. But in it, I pointed out a few things, and I'll remind you that at the time, this was written and approved in the midst of the Calhoun statue controversy. And it was written in part to point out that that statue was taken down without consultation with the Commission on History. Now, I do know that before I became a member, there was a draft statement, more than a statement, a description of Calhoun's history, pros and cons, and that it was, I believe, prepared by this commission, taken to city council. Okay, thank you. It was taken to city council and not accepted for publication. But subsequent to that, the statute came down, and we were not, and somebody can tell me if I'm wrong, we were not consulted on the importance of either leaving it up or taking it down. So I wrote this resolution, again approved and forwarded, and it mentions statues, but it points out what we believe the city council has us for. And the ordinance provided states that, and much of what I wrote and we approved came from that ordinance. And I hope that the five of us who are here have read it again, but the six of us who aren't here, I don't know if they read it or not, and we don't see them, and that's part of the problem. Part of the problem, we have an intense and intent group who are active and others who are, oh, by the way. So that's what prompts me. I think that we have more of a responsibility. I know we have more potential. And I believe that the city council either intentionally or unknowingly ignores us. Now, if that's what the city council wants, who am I to propose anything different?
And sometimes some of this stuff is strictly political. And in my opinion, that's why I brought this thing about the Huguenot Society, about E.B. White. They want to massage history.
Yeah. I mean, and everyone's welcome to speak. Dale, I totally agree with you. I think the fact that there are two city council members who are supposed to serve on this commission, and one has not been appointed, and the other who does not attend, I can't say whether it's through not caring or ignorance as to why we are seemingly ignored. I tend to agree with it. I'm not sure if we want to do anything with an action agenda to try to change that, but please discuss. Dale.
But let me continue just a minute. I'm very pleased to see the current meeting agenda. It's the most robust one I've seen the whole time I've been here. Wonderful subjects, the right way to do things. But we're still responding to the public. Great subjects, good approach, good purpose. But we're still just responding. We're not responding to the city council. We're not responding to the mayor. We're not initiating anything on our own, with this now exception today with your item on this agenda. And I think it's fully appropriate for us as individuals to bring subjects.
I think according to the statute it is, and I did do a tiny bit of research, that yes, this commission, at one point, I counted them and I had a printout, that this commission did actually create more than 30 plaques, put them up through this. By the 1980s, there were 31 that this commission had done, and many of them are missing off the buildings, and so that I'm not sure where they've gone. But Mickey might be the thing too. I think that this, that obviously requires a budgetary item to create those plaques. But like I said, in 1985, there was a count of what plaques that this commission put up. And I know that 3 or 4 of them are no longer, even the fireproof building right behind us, that has disappeared. So we do have that power to bring things forward. So I think for our own knowledge, I don't know, like I said, and Mickey, you said you remember when there was a little bit of a treasury here, that there actually was some funding. So I'm opening for discussion. I'm not leading this discussion. I'm just opening it for discussion.
Let me just make it two more. The term archivist was mentioned earlier in this meeting. Does Charleston have an archivist?
We have a records manager. The city of Charleston's got a records manager, but not an archivist.
Is the record manager in the sense of a historical record keeper?
There are historical, yeah. So Meg Moon does have historical records at 2 George Street. I think the majority, there are historical records there, depending on how you define history. Many of the very early ones, pre-Civil War, have been turned over to the Charleston County Public Library. The city still owns them, but they're accessed there.
One last thing, and I bring it up only because it was in the resolution and I don't want it to be overlooked. It's not my subject, but someone at the time made reference to the need and possible value of a policy on best practices. Now, any organization would benefit from that, but I don't know if it's appropriate for us or whether it's something that's some other component of city government would prepare and issue to us as a directive. I just wanted to mention it because it was mentioned in that resolution. That's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Sure, and do turn on your green light, David. We have a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, this is just for information. My recollection is when we forwarded the draft that we all worked on to city council relating to the Calhoun statute, putting it in context or whatever. They didn't refuse to receive it. They just tabled it because they didn't want to get into the discussion again. Isn't that correct?
I was the person actually submitting it, basically, because I guess I was chair then too. And I will say that, the city council, again, they received it as information, and they just thought that maybe they should turn it over to the Parks Department instead of the Historical Commission, since it was in a city park. That's my memory. Dale.
May I ask, are you talking about the intended or proposed verbiage?
But long before the statue was to come
Okay,
down.
Okay, and not this resolution itself?
Right, no, years before the resolution, there was the thought when the talk was going, go ahead, David, yeah.
Thank you.
This was when we were trying to prevent what happened.
I understand. Thank you.
And so that is, and again, I share your frustration, and maybe, so is there an action item? Do we want to ask for a meeting with the mayor? Do we want to ask Philip, the clerk of council? How do we, assistant clerk of council, how do we proceed to have the city follow its own dictum? Of having 2 city council members on this committee about, I think it said in there that we are appointed annually. I think we've all been here. I don't think we've gotten a regular letter in a long while. And
It says
there are
until somebody replaces.
Pardon?
The actual language, it says you're appointed for 1 year or until their successor have been appointed and qualified.
Right.
So
So I guess, but then again, the majority of our members are not here and never come. And so then again, do we just want to wring our hands, or do we want to do an action item? Do we want to continue this at another meeting? Do we want to, again, what do we want to do about it?
I hate to answer your question with another question, but Philip's here, and perhaps he has a better feel than we do for what part the clerk of council has in the administration of commissions, and maybe they're all different. And maybe the clerk of council's function is to provide staff and let us do what we have to do, but I really don't know. So if we are to seek advice, I answer your question with a question. Do we seek it from the clerk of council and ask for a meeting with her? Or do we pick our favorite council member and ask him or her to show up? I don't know.
Philip, do you have any thoughts on that?
That would be above my pay grade, but I can certainly take it up personally with the clerk of council, and I'm sure she would know where to go with that and where to point you in the direction, whether that's us or what have you.
meeting with Councilman Seekings at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, I can bring it up with.
Well, I think just my personal thought is as many points of access as possible, but I do foresee that could be an action item that we could decide on, that we could request Philip to find the proper channel for us and the proper person within the city to discuss our concerns with the workings of the commission and the power of the commission. And then and then maybe we can continue this discussion at the next meeting once we have the information. Do we want to write something? Do we want to do a subcommittee? do we want to, again, sum up our summaries? But to me, that seems a logical first step. And so then, and again, I'm not trying to put words in people's mouth, but if someone thinks that's a good idea, they could, I guess, propose it. But I think we can sit here and discuss it too, because I think, thank you for being so articulate. I think we all feel that way.
Well,
And
I got one other comment. I think we better tread carefully so that we don't create unintended consequences. And therefore, I do think we should think about it very carefully and not do anything that's just willy-nilly, which could create problems. That's all I'll say.
okay, but so, and I'm just going to answer that with a question too. Would just seeking the way to go forward,
Well, what are we asking? It's all, as lawyers know, it's all about how you ask the questions. And so what questions would we be asking? That's what I mean. We don't, until we articulate exactly what it is, it would seem to me we should try to figure out in advance what questions to ask, as opposed to just going and saying, hey, to the clerk, well, how do we function, or whatever. That's what I mean. I don't know what the questions would be. And those are very important, the way you phrase the questions.
and would we want to phrase that question today or defer it to another
No, I
time?
think we need to sleep and think about it.
I'll jump
I'm
in
not
real quick.
prepared.
Sorry. We would need, we don't have anything on the agenda to vote on it, so we couldn't motion today. So I would suggest like emailing me or between each other, et cetera.
Well, thank you for that point.
I think we need-
I don't follow that exactly. I mean, we're an independent body that we can make motions on subjects, and this is on the agenda, not as a motion or action item.
It's for discussion.
My
Right.
understanding and what I've been told has been, you need action items in order to vote on something. If there's a discussion, then no vote can be had. Votes have to come from the agenda. But
Thank you for that.
So if we were to do this at a next meeting, how would we phrase that on our agenda?
could say discussion and potential action regarding X, Y, and Z, A, B, and C.
Am I correct in assuming, Dale, or everybody, what we're trying to do is make this commission more effective in the community?
Yes, ma'am, in part.
Okay. Because it seems to me, I used to have a long list. There's I've got some great items that I never got off of first base that would really help the city, like putting up some pictures of things like St. Andrew's Hall on that wall on Broad Street. And they're productive. And I brought it up to somebody in the St. Andrews Society, and somebody said, we don't want that. And I think David's right. I don't care what you go after in this town. There are more naysayers than there are people who will say that's great. It's scary.
I mean, again, I'll just interject my personal thought. I agree with you, Peg and Dale, to make it more effective. But also too, I think, it's my personal belief, and I'm not sure if the city has these, if one did not have to accept the role on this commission when it was offered to one. And if one does not attend, I mean, it's great, but it saddens me that we have to scramble for a quorum, when the public really is depending on us. And I think we were all appointed for diversity of viewpoints. And I just think if we had more active members, I think that might be another issue, but again, I think it does fall under how we become more effective.
Perhaps you could say that, say, for instance, if you do not attend 75% of the meetings, 50% of the meetings, that we'd like to fill that slot with someone else.
Yeah. So again, I think this is all helpful, but I do think that I'm guessing the sense that when we come together again, we would want an agenda item saying discussion and possible action. And again, we're not voting on it, but Mickey?
Well, you know, I've been on
You-
this committee or the other committee forever. And actually, as soon as the mayor becomes the new mayor, he's supposed to appoint new commission members, or sometimes he'll, you know, appoint some that have been on. But it seems that that didn't happen this year. Like, how long has he been?
Right. And
It's
again,
been
I don't want to be
3 years.
political, but I will say that in the previous administration, at least the beginning, it started out as we're going to get all commissions on track. And then as human endeavor is, when you start something, you do that too. So again, it seems that we've slipped between the cracks. I mean, I have no idea. So again, I think this is all fuel for a further discussion. And so if we feel we have finished with agenda item F, I would just, if there's any more discussion, it's not a point of, we're not, no action agenda, no decision being made. Do we feel that we've discussed point F enough to get to point G? Again, I'm not trying, yeah. So is there anything under point G, miscellaneous business? Are you aware of anything, Philip?
I have received, as far as I know, I could forget, but I have received no other extra items that will be coming forward so far. I will let you know, Mr. Chairman, should I hear of anything from the archives or anyone else.
Okay. Yep, and I guess we know that the fire department materials are coming down the line. I'm not sure, we've gotten some other things too, but, and I know we often scatter for the summer, but maybe we'll see each other in a month. But again, I thank you all for attending, and I actually think, I agree with you, Dale, that this has been a substantive meeting, and thank you for bringing it to our attention. And so then we know what an agenda item is going to be at our next meeting. Okay, so, if no other business, can we adjourn this meeting? Okay, motion accepted. Okay, thank you all for attending.